Will Smith is a global entertainment icon, multi-platinum selling music artist, and is responsible for the single greatest individual box office streak in the history of Hollywood. His words, not mine. And in 2022 he became an Oscar winner, although you could be forgiven for not remembering that considering what else transpired on the night. And just mere months before that infamous slap that was heard all around the world, Will released his long-awaited memoir, simply entitled Will, and that of course is what this video is all about. So, is it any good? Is it just another silly lightweight showbiz memoir, or is it actually a quality offering? How much does he reveal about his marriage with Jada? Are there any clues in Will's history which might explain the whole Chris Rock Oscar fiasco? So many questions, let's find out. And to help you decide whether you should spend your hard-earned cash and precious time reading it, I am going to give you my 5 key takeaways and review. Let's get into it. The book begins with Will talking about the physical abuse his mother suffered at the hands of his father, and the profound impact this trauma had on the rest of his life, as you would imagine. Will looks up to his father a great deal, but struggles to reconcile his feelings about somebody who he loves, but also feels tremendous anger for. From a young age, he wrestles with feelings of deep shame and cowardice at not being able to protect his mother. So to go back to the Oscar situation, for Will to see a woman he loves, his wife in this case, being publicly mocked, this would have been a deeply triggering experience for him. I'm not condoning his actions, but I imagine this situation would have played into a very deep wound of his around his ability to protect the women in his life. It was interesting to see how Will explores the complexity of the parent-child relationship, and he shows a great deal of vulnerability, especially earlier in the book. This is definitely not some woolly throwaway showbiz memoir at all. His dad served in the army and applies this militant approach to raising his kids. He teaches them that every act, no matter how small, is a mission, and to do everything with a do-or-die mentality. So Will is clearly influenced by his father's army mentality, and it's obvious that he's carried it through to his adult working life also. And it's obvious that he's carried it through to his adult working life also, and I'm sure you could attribute a lot of his phenomenal success to this mindset, but conversely it's probably caused a lot of his issues too. Will first rose to fame as one half of the hip-hop duo DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince in the late 80s, and were the first ever hip-hop act to win a Grammy. Will gives a mini history lesson in the book about how hip-hop originated and spread throughout the United States, and as somebody who is a bit of an ignoramus when it comes to the genre, I found it fascinating. Will writes nostalgically of the street corner rap battles during high school, which helped him to hone his craft, and really manages to capture the energy of the era on these pages. But once he covers the DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince years, there is not much said about his music career for the rest of the 90s or the noughties. And for someone like myself, I'm a much bigger music fan than a movie fan, and I would have liked a bit more on his music career in the 90s and noughties, but that's probably just me. When asked by his manager JL in the early 90s what exactly his professional goals were, the clearly lacking in ambition younger Will responds by saying he wants to be the biggest movie star in the world. Thereafter he makes a conscious decision to pursue this goal, and Will and JL start researching movies and working on a strategy to make this goal happen. JL begins reading potential scripts for Will and advises him to take his first movie role in 6 Degrees of Separation, a movie which won Will widespread critical acclaim and enabled Hollywood to start seeing him not just as a sitcom star, but also as a movie star. He even goes as far as walking straight up to Bruce Willis, Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger at a Planet Hollywood party and asking them straight up how to become the biggest movie star in the world. So Arnie advises him, "Don't worry, I won't do the accent. You are not a movie star if your movies are only successful in America. You are not a movie star until every person in every country on earth knows who you are. You have to travel the globe, shake every hand, kiss every baby. Think of yourself as a politician running for the biggest movie star in the world." So now you know, kids. In many ways, I really admire his naked ambition and his frankness about it. Personally, I really like people who have big dreams and who work really hard to make them happen. In saying that, he does seem far more interested in movie marketing and box office takings than the process of actual filmmaking or the craft of acting. More interested in his own brand than his art, and that I found questionable. I guess it's a very American mentality. I can't imagine a British or Irish actor being open about such a goal or even having it in the first place, But on the other hand, I do really admire his unashamed, naked ambition, and in a lot of ways I find it quite refreshing. He does seem a little dismissive of friends and people in his life who aren't as focused as he is and who don't share his work ethic. Relationships cannot withstand the tidal wave that is Will Smith's ambition. The guy has got a huge ego, but let's be honest, he has the goods to back it up. I know his boasting in the book bothered a lot of readers, but you don't end up being one of the biggest entertainers in the world by accident. As they say, you've got to be a bit odd to be number one. In spite of his stratospheric success, Will has faced some serious challenges in his life, and thankfully he's not afraid to talk about them here in the book. After breaking through with DJ Jazzy Jeff in the late 80s and becoming a millionaire in his late teens, by 1990 he was flat broke after the duo's third album bombed hard, and he had spent all of his earnings but paid no tax, and Will ended up back at home in Philadelphia penniless. He eventually makes it to LA and starts hanging around backstage at the Arsenio Hall show, where he meets Benny Medina, who gets him an audition for a new sitcom. That sitcom was of course The Fresh Prince, and its success helps him pay off his debt and puts him on the road to superstardom. Will also writes about the times he's messed up in his personal life. For example, when he sets his first girlfriend's clothes on fire after he finds out she's cheated on him, or the time he speaks horribly on the phone to his first wife, Cherie. I like that he doesn't present himself in the book as being perfect, and he owns up to the times in his life when he was, well, a dickhead, or as Americans say, a jerk. Despite all this, there is no real mention of Wild Wild West, a rare flop movie of his, or some of his later solo albums which didn't take off. The last part of the book looks at the fallout his pitbull determination and scorched earth mentality, his words not mine, have on himself and his family long term. Ultimately, it seems that all the money and fame hasn't made him happy and he needs to look elsewhere for fulfillment, and the closing chapters are his arc of redemption. It does sound as if he is incredibly difficult to live with and really lacking in self-awareness at times, but being super intense and ambitious all the time and never being able to hit the off button must be really exhausting for those around him. When his 2007 sci-fi movie I Am Legend grosses $77 million on its opening weekend at the box office and becomes the biggest December opening ever at the time, Will laments that it didn't hit $80 million. And in his quest for spiritual enlightenment, he starts experimenting with some new age therapies and practices which have some very interesting results indeed. The book is in part a self-help book, so it's a real treasure trove of wisdom and lightbulb moment quotes, so here are a few of my favourite. The attainment of my dream became an act of survival. In my darkest nights my dream saved my life. I saw the realisation of my dream as my only road to love and happiness. My belief was, everything worth living for is at the top of the mountain. In order to feel confident and secure, you need to have something to feel confident and secure about. When you have adequately cultivated your unique skills and gifts, then you're excited about approaching and interacting with the world. It's a kind of mental illness if we cannot shape our experiences into a story that gives our existence a sense of purpose. Sometimes people try to play the cards they wish they had, instead of playing the hands they've been dealt. The capacity to adjust and improvise is arguably the single most critical human ability. So in summing up, I should mention, putting the whole Oscars incident aside, Will Smith is someone who I've really admired my whole life. I've actually hardly seen any of his movies except for The Pursuit of Happiness, which I really enjoyed, but he's somebody who's been there my whole life and it feels like I've kind of grown up with him. I've always admired his hard work mentality and his positive energy, but I'm well aware that the traits that have endeared him to me are the same things that other people find off-putting. Will has an enormous ego and he's not afraid to blow his trumpet throughout the book. I don't mind that so much, but I realise for other people it could really start to grate. Self-help guru Mark Manson co-wrote the book, but it still feels very much like Will's book. His larger-than-life personality is stamped all across it. Mark's voice isn't noticeable as a ghostwriter's shouldn't be, so kudos to him for that. And the book is really well structured and put together. The story is told chronologically, but he doesn't talk much about the later stages of his music or movie careers, which personally I found a little disappointing. With the exception of his earlier work and his blockbuster Ali, most of his movies and music are only mentioned superficially. There must have been a creative decision between him and Mark not to cover these experiences, as they don't move the overall story forward. There is also no mention in the book of his widely publicised open marriage with his wife Jada. It took me a lot longer to read this book than most, just because I kept stopping to check his earlier videos, scenes from The Fresh Prince and movie clips that he references throughout. This book will of course resonate with his fans, but also those of you who love hip-hop and the movie business, or anybody who feels they've hit rock bottom, who's living with domestic violence, or is experiencing marital issues. So should you bin, borrow or buy this book, I would go right ahead and buy it. Will is a larger-than-life character, he's had a fascinating life, and this book is a quality offering from start to finish. P.S. Jada was right, it wasn't funny Will, and when you read the book you'll know what I mean. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts on anything in this video, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other videos.